Players are leaving, servers are unstable, and honestly, this isn't the first time this has happened. And if nothing changes, this could actually become the end for the game we love. So in this video, I want to break down what's going on, why it keeps happening, what it means for players like us, and what we can do about it to make this a bit more engaging. And so I don't just yap about the game for 20 minutes, but instead we can have a proper dialogue. I've invited other creators from different areas and niches of ARK to share their thoughts in the video. They've recorded and edited these clips themselves. They don't necessarily have to agree with what I'm saying, but I think it's important to hear other opinions in this video too. The aim of this video is to highlight current issues surrounding Wildcard, Snail Games, ARK Ascended, and Evolved. If you're looking for a drama video, you have come to the wrong place. The fact that more than 2 years after the release of ASA, we still don't have all the content from ASE is probably one of the biggest problems of them all. And at the same time, it's simply the case that most of the content we have received in ASA so far already exists in ASE. This is also one of the main reasons why existing ASE players aren't switching to ASA, because there's still less content in ASA than in ASE, and the new content in ASA isn't good enough to attract new players. At the same time, there doesn't seem to be a clear strategy. For me, this question addresses so many issues. What sort of game is ASA? Is it simply a remake of ARK Survival Evolved? If so, why do we need the new content when we already had a good ARK Survival Evolved? Is it a new game? If so, why do we need the old content and not make it a game on its own? For me, Lost Colony really felt great. Not because it was a good DLC. It was new. It was fun. Of course, it was and still is buggy. But the new Outpost missions are one of the best additions to the game in years. The defense missions are proper fun, and taming thralls could have had the potential to take the game on a whole new level. But now, Wildcard is busy finishing Genesis Part 1, and the Outpost missions, the only thing on that map that's actually fun, have been buggy for months, so that you can't complete them. Which is why all the official servers are just empty, because there is no reason to play Lost Colony. On the other hand, Wildcard is now focusing on Genesis Part 1. One of the maps the community likes the least, and not even new water physics or reused Atlas assets won't change the fact that the map will be empty after 2 weeks, because nobody wants to play Genesis Part 1. Wildcard, please come up with a clear strategy and communicate it properly. To this day, we still don't really know what kind of game ASA is supposed to be, and I believe the only strategy is to focus on porting the key elements from ASE and then creating new content for ASA. This would include the maps that the community really like and that are genuinely important. Maps like Ragnarok, Valguero, Lost Island, The Center should have been included in the game from the start on, whereas maps like The Island, Scorched Earth or Aberration might not have been included at all. Would these maps be missing? Of course, but you could turn it into a whole new experience and tell a different story that feels new. New content like Lost Colony needs to be pushed, fixed and improved much more. ASA could have been developed as an alternative to ASE, and by that I don't just mean as a game, but also as an alternative storyline, just as happened with Lost Colony, so that it isn't just the same game with better graphics.
I've been playing ARK now for the past 10 years, and I've seen both the best and the worst of this game. Now, I still love ARK, and that's why I'm part of this project. And there's many things that ARK Ascended needs to do in order to address these problems. However, I think there are two major issues that Wildcard need to focus on right now. The first is the remaster problem. A remaster should not feel worse than the original game, but with ARK Ascended, that is exactly how it feels for a lot of players. Some remastered maps like Aberration and the Center have lost the atmosphere and the identity that made the originals feel special. On top of that, the game still has major stability and performance issues, especially on console. When people in the community are telling others to go back and play ARK Evolved because it runs better, that is a failure. ASA was meant to be a rebuilt version of ARK, but too often it just feels like the very same old game with a new coat of paint. The second problem is that ASA still feels messy and undertested. A remaster should not still have old bugs carried over from the original, but it does. A good example is the One Who Waits Explore notes. These are 15 notes that are split across the island, Scorched Earth, and Aberration. But if you look in the Explore note menu, they will have the Aberration map icon. So when players are trying to collect everything for their 10 levels, the game makes it look like the missing notes that they need are on the wrong map. Now, it's a small bug, but it creates unnecessary frustration and still makes the remaster feel sloppy. For me, look, I'm not a game dev, and I don't know the inner workings, and I'm sure Wildcard is working hard on addressing the game. But the fix is simple. Wildcard needs to stop producing all this massive content, right? We've got a great roadmap ahead, but that needs to take a back seat. We need to focus on the foundation of ARK Ascended first. That means better optimization, a smaller game size, fixing old bugs, and making the remaster feel more polished instead of messy, right? Every update that comes out should be enhancing the game. It shouldn't be breaking other factors of the game, okay? They need proper testing before a map comes out or an update comes out, either through public testing or build a trusted community testers under an NDA, because if players can find major problems within hours of launch, those problems should have been caught before release.
But please, stop with the generic DLCs. And I don't mean all the new maps or content we have received. I mean the ones that were added were interesting for a week or two at most, and then nobody used them anymore. For example, many of the new creatures from the ARK editions we have received. And please, don't get me wrong, I really like many of these creatures. But given that most of them have been added to the game basically unchanged from the mod, it takes far too long, and as a result, the creatures often end up being too generic and replaceable. Look at the Ceratosaurus. I mean, nobody plays it anymore. It was useless from the start and was never played. It looked good, but after just a week, nobody was interested in it anymore. And the problem isn't that this content is bad. The problem is that this content is generic and replaceable. New creatures that we already know from a mod, simply added to the game without any proper balancing or reworking, won't keep players engaged. And it doesn't matter if it's an ARK Editions creature being added or another mod. And just because we get a new creature every month, we don't want to play the game more and no new players are joining. Quality beats quantity. I would rather like to get a new creature or new content only every 6 months if it keeps me engaged and entertained for another 6 months, while existing content is improved in the meantime than getting a new creature every 4 weeks. What use are 500 creatures to me if I can only play the 50 best ones because there are now so many creatures that Wildcard itself can't keep up with fixing and balancing them, meaning most of them are unplayable anyway. And creatures are just one example. The same applies to items, mechanics and maps. When I get a battle rig, I want them to work properly and feel good, and I want them to be able to actually do something. And a lot of it is, in a way, my own fault. Or rather, our own fault. And I mean content creators. The ARK content space is becoming increasingly competitive, and it's now getting harder and harder to create new ARK content that you can actually discover for yourself as a player. Because a week before a new creature is added to the game, creator XY has already posted a guide on how to tame it without ever seeing it. A good example is also that on the first day after Lost Colony was released, there were already guides on the best way to defeat the bosses without even knowing what's been added to the map. And yes, I am a creator too, and I've made nearly 15 videos about Lost Colony alone. But after all, the best part of gaming is discovering new things and finding secrets. But if players can't discover anything new and have already seen all the content a couple hours after it has been released, how can we expect them to continue enjoying the game we love for longer than a couple of days? I'm no exception from this. I'm part of the problem too, and because I, like others, make a living from it, there are some things I simply cannot change. I do try to stick to a certain order when I release videos for new content, because I want people to be able to find and discover things for themselves. But I also catch myself asking, don't people want to find that out for themselves? That's why, for example, you won't find a boss guide on my channel that's released on the same day as the boss. Now, addressing all creators directly, and I want to use clear words. I consider us colleagues, and as a colleague, we need to tell each other the truth every now and then. We too are the reason why the game we love is getting worse and worse. Not because we entertain, come up with new challenges, and engage with the community. Not because we spend hours live streaming on the day a DLC is released, waiting together for the update to arrive and hyping up the community. We are part of the problem if just an hour after the update we upload a guide showcasing 50 new features from the update simply to be the first and collect the most clicks, but taking away the chance for players to discover things for themselves. I'm no better myself, and I usually want to get my guides done quite quickly. I love my job, and I love creating content about the game, but I feel shame if I see that the first guide is published before all players have even finished downloading the update, or even worse, a week before the update. I think the problem we're facing right now is that bad players are too quick to assume someone's hacking and then resort to hacking themselves, because they don't know what it's really like when someone is hacking. There are actually a few really good videos on this. And as I'm not really confident on telling you about the current state of that, I'll hand this over to someone who really knows their stuff.
So guys, we only have a very limited time here together, so I'm only talking about the biggest flaws of this game. I could go on forever, but let's talk about the biggest problems only. What is completely destroying the game at the moment is, of course, cheating. The biggest problem with ARK in general, at least on official PvP, cheating is the meta. You can't play small tribes or 1x official PvP anymore because there is too much cheating and either no dev support at all, or it's working way too slow and you never ever can fix all the cheating clients and exploits anyway. You can't fix meshing. It's not gonna happen, at least not in this game. But there's one solution and everyone in the community already knows about this. A live dev support, a live enforcement. You can't fix cheat clients or exploits, but with a live dev support, a live enforcement, you can ban or dev wipe the cheaters. And why do I know that this is working? Because there was one single official PvP cluster that had a kind of live dev support, and that was Conquest official PvP from season 1 to 5, I'd say. We had this enforcement Discord where you could do tickets regarding cheaters, and actual human beings were responding to you. They were also sometimes not reacting super fast. Sometimes you had to deal with the cheaters yourself, so it wasn't perfect. It was far from perfect, but you would still see cheaters getting banned or dev wiped on a daily basis. And this system, despite not being perfect, already led to the amount of cheating tremendously decreasing. As I said, Conquest seasons 1 to 5 were probably the most legit and most fun I've ever had on official PvP. And yeah, it was working. The servers were super populated. Some servers were kept all the way through the season, and the season's usually going on for 3 to 6 months. Almost no cheating. I know Conquest had other problems with TEA and the corruption allegations, but you can still see what a kind of live dev support is doing to this game. And it doesn't matter how much money they needed to invest into this. It would be worth it. So many people were playing Conquest back in the days. So many people would come back to this game if there was a live dev support. Actual human beings communicating with you, solving tickets and banning cheaters. That would solve cheating. What can I tell you?
Hi guys, my name is Gart and I'm a German ARK PvP YouTuber and streamer. Frodo asked me for my opinion about several points on his list about the current Azer situation. First of all, I want to say something about hackers and cheaters in PvP. This is one of the biggest problems at the moment. Even on unofficial servers, there are several hackers and especially mesher who just walk into your base coming from somewhere in the mesh and hit your jennies. They got everything they need and just delete all your gens without even touching a single turret. If you get close to them, they see you instant, cause they got map-wide wall hacks with nameplates on every person. On official it's even worse. My friends told me these days you need a hacker in your tribe just to counter the enemy hackers with their wall hack and aimbot. They got speed hack and many other stuff. I have never seen so many hackers on unofficial, and the server hosts don't know what to do at the moment. ARK accounts are cheap as and they just create the next one after getting banned.
Right from the start, one of ASA's biggest selling points was also its biggest problem. Even today, many players simply can't play ASA because the graphics, thanks to the Unreal 5 upgrade, are just too good. And even after 2 years of optimization, ASA often doesn't play any better. And yes, we have had the problem with ASE too, but ASE is now 10 years old and has been optimized several times over that period, making it really playable after 10 years. On top of that, a 10-year-old game simply performs better because, well, it's 10 years old and hardware has improved in that time. ASA looks absolutely stunning if you can actually play it. Very few people, especially given current hardware prices, own hardware capable of running the game at all. But the problem with ASA is that we don't want to and can't wait another 10 years for the game's optimization to improve, because at the current rate, the game simply won't be around at that time. Yes, we had the Unreal update and things improved, yet most of the comments under my video are still about the game's performance, because for many players it's still simply unplayable. Next-gen graphics doesn't necessarily mean you're building a next-gen game, especially if nobody can actually play your game because the hardware just can't handle it. And buying a new setup at current prices is simply no solution for most gamers. That's why many are still playing ASE, even 2 years after the release of ASA and 3 major performance updates for the game. Because ASE simply runs better, and it also shows that the gamers don't always need next-gen graphics to have a good gaming experience. And on top of that, there's the absolutely dreadful Nitrado servers on the official servers. Anyone who's ever played on an official server knows that there's constant lag, rubber banding and resets, even when these servers aren't under much load. We've reached a point where unofficial servers run by random people who know nothing about computers deliver better performance than the official Nitrado servers. I don't really know how to sort this out, because the obvious solution is get yourself a better setup. But clearly that's not the answer, especially when you have to spend $700 on a GPU and another $500 for the RAM. And even then, you can only play the game on low settings with a performance boost. In short, I can only say that if you want to play ASA and don't have a setup that's good enough, well, it's going to be tricky, unless you've got the money. Of course, you can play on the lowest settings and then use the performance boost that comes with the game and with some servers, but then your graphics are worse than in ASE. However, the only solution Wildcard can offer is simply to continue optimizing the game as quickly as possible. And that would be good, because if only 20% of your target audience can actually play the game because it simply doesn't run well enough, then it would certainly help to make the game more accessible to more people. Or alternatively, you could buy a console and play ARK on that. Or maybe not. I hate it when one of my tribe mates tells me they're playing on PlayStation, because then I know they'll be saying, "Hold on, I've got a CE error" every 5 minutes. PlayStation players in particular have constant issues with the game. Many experience crashes, glitches, or simply bugs. Newer maps, such as Ragnarok and Astreus, still simply don't work reliably on consoles and cause a great deal of frustration. As a rule of thumb, you can assume that the player base is split 50-50, with 50% playing on PC and 50% playing on console, and the trend is currently leaning more towards console, as a PC is simply too expensive. This means that even if they wanted to play the game, 50% of the players are currently somewhat unable to do it. But if a PC isn't affordable and the console version isn't playable, what could the solution be? Well, there's only one solution. Wildcard needs to take the time to sort out these issues, because we as players, we have no possibility to improve the situation. We can write 100 guides or make walkthrough videos through commands, but if the game doesn't work, it doesn't work. Which would be a shame, because if the game isn't playable on console, we will eventually lose all of those players. Something we see every month in the shrinking player base. In the video description, I have included a link to a video from GP that covers exactly this point. Thanks for allowing me to post it under my video. Once you have finished here, please take a couple of minutes to click on the link and watch the video to see just how bad things really are for console players.
Most of my hours that I have on ARK are spent on the small tribes clusters. And the biggest issues for me are meshing, cheating, duping, and base spots. I think a big step in the right direction would be better balanced base spots. Rattles should be strong but small for solos, while caves should have more space, weaker entrances, and maybe multiple choke points. It should be balanced in a way that bigger tribes do not want to build in the rattles. Every base spot also needs way better mesh defense, and if they actually focus on fixing that, the game would already feel a lot better. On my recent video, I got a couple comments about another issue that ARK has. That is people hiding in caves and rattles, which makes PvP pretty boring. And I fully agree with that take. However, in my opinion, rattles shouldn't be removed, but they should make them small enough so big tribes don't really have a use of staying in it. If you want people to build out in the open again, first they need to fix a lot of the aimbot and all that kind of stuff, because otherwise having a land base, speaking from experience, kind of sucks when you get aimbotted the whole time. You have to wait in your force field until you see an opening to do something, which is kind of boring. And dino mutations need a huge nerf. Right now, the fully mutated dinos are way too OP on small tribes and official, and bases simply get wiped in no time. On top of that, players have simply gotten better at the game. As a new player, official PvP is really hard to get into. It is basically like dropping a bronze Marvel Rivals player into a GM lobby.
These days, every update seems to divide people into two camps. There are those who are delighted and say, finally some new stuff we can use and play. And then there are the others who say, please, no updates. You always break stuff when you patch it. In software development, we actually have a name for that. It's called feature creep. This occurs when companies are more into creating new content than fixing existing content. And eventually, you reach a point where for every new feature added, two existing ones simply break. This actually became very clear in the Astraeus mega update. Many of the problems had nothing to do with Astraeus itself, but the update included a few new mechanics that triggered bugs which have been added to the game months ago but had simply been lying dormant in the source code until they were triggered. If Wildcard would have taken the time to find and fix these beforehand, these bugs would never have happened. The problem with that is that while it's fun to guess what will break in the next update, in the long run, each update takes something away from the community. If you have to wait a whole week after an update before you can actually play the game again. And then it's not so funny anymore. This pattern can be seen in the whole industry, and it's usually not the developer's fault, but the management's fault, because management thinks finished is good enough and everything has to be delivered as quickly as possible. As a result, there's very little time for ensuring quality and testing new features. There are really only two ways to eliminate feature creep from an application. The first is to ensure it is prevented before it actually happens through testing and quality ensuring processes. The second method is to invest a great deal of time, resources, and money into the quality of the game after you got your issues. As a player, there isn't really much you can do, apart from reporting all the bugs you find and hoping that a developer is given the time and resources to fix them.
Hello guys, my name is Hamsti and I'm a German ARK YouTuber. I'm playing ARK since 2016, about 10 years. It's a long time, but I think I'm a normal casual player, not the biggest PvP pro. But I have my moments, so overall, I think Studio Wildcard is doing a good job fixing bugs and keeping ARK fun to play. But sometimes there are one or two bugs where you wonder why they are still not fixed. I mean, they are not very serious. but they can be a bit annoying and can affect the game a little. For example, there's a parachute bug. When you put all settings on low, the string of the parachute just disappears. So if you change the settings a bit, they come back, but I don't know why. This has been in the game for a long time. Another example is the sound bug, especially with Flying Dinosaur. For example, the Pete sometimes only plays its wing sounds in one ear, which feels completely strange while playing. Or if you attack, the attack sound just plays on one ear, and it's super annoying. And I think the Pete is not the only dino with this problem. I mean, these bugs aren't a big deal. Other small bugs in the game, but nothing that completely ruins the experience. I know, new DLC, new bugs, Wildcard has to fix it. I completely understand that. So I would say all in all, I think ARK is still an amazing game. And I also know the change from ARK Survival Evolved to Ascended was not easy. And the community is still a little bit divided. But for me personally, I think ARK is still an awesome game. I love to play it. And I'm really looking forward to the new content. Alright, let's go to the next chapter.
Don't get me wrong, I think Astraeus and Lost Colony are really good maps and they're fun to play and explore. But the thing is, in PvP, we don't want to discover new things. We want to keep our creatures and loot safe, and for that, we need good base locations. But especially on maps that get played a lot, like Astraeus, there are so few base locations for solos and duos that it's impossible for a small tribe to hide in PvP. But even if most players will be playing solo, in duos or in small tribes, the caves have been cleared, the red holes closed, the only good base locations removed, and the remaining locations are easy to raid and mesh. Red holes are actually just minor errors in the map. Holes, cracks or small caves that happen to be in the meshes that in most cases shouldn't be there. But in PvP, they're incredibly useful because they're usually quite strong. Even for larger tribes, it's super difficult to raid them, meaning they can often be defended by solo players. However, over 50% of the player base who play PvE don't need red holes because they simply don't need to hide from enemies. Some red holes are better than others. They lead under the mesh or into unfinished areas, making everything look a bit uglier. In many cases, however, red holes are the only thing that allows many of us to still play PvP on official servers, as they protect our loot and creatures. But I don't think removing red holes is a good solution. By removing red holes, you will lose a massive player base, namely all solo and duo players in PvP. Please make red holes playable again. Remove the mesh holes and patch them. There are hundreds of videos of really cool red holes. For these, you'd really just need to make the beds spawnable, fix a few glitches and texture errors, and then the red holes wouldn't look like bugs, but like new caves. And I wouldn't have to worry that they'll be deleted and my creatures will starve inside the wall because a stone has now spawned there. I don't think we need to keep every red hole, but they're part of the game, so why not treat them like that? A few cosmetic tweaks and the red hole looks as if it was planned. I know you can do it. You've already done it in some places, on the center for example, and really nice red holes have been created, and you all know which red hole I mean. This section has ended up being longer than intended. Dredgy has made a whole video on exactly this point. I've linked it in the video description. Have a look at the video and leave a like.
Asa isn't made for PvP anymore. I wouldn't approve 100% with this opinion, but at the moment with all those hackers it's kinda useless to play PvP. The defense meta is way too strong with all the turrets placed on ceilings without any support. You don't need to be good at building anymore, cause the game does every hard part for you. If you aren't a total scrub, you can easily play half the time like you had to play in ARK Survival Evolved. You won't get raided in the right spot, cause nobody's even touching you. Many players quit servers without really raiding anybody. They join, do some open world PvP and quit. If you come online while getting offline raided, 9 out of 10 players run away instant. Cause they know it's nearly impossible to win now. And now, I bet some of you guys feel rage baited and will tell me in the comments I don't know what I'm talking about. If you got other experience, good for you. I just can talk about my experience in PvP. And if you're really honest, you know I'm right most of the time. Players don't want to raid online anymore. ARK Survival Ascended is way slower cause they want console players to be a part of it. In my opinion, PvP with console and PC mixed isn't possible. You nerf the possibilities of the game for PC players just to cash grab more cells on console. But we all know the PvP in ARK community isn't a big thing anymore. Not cause nobody wants to play PvP, it's cause nobody likes to play PvP. While the game is performing like this, with all those stupid changes. Every single patch you get a new bug, and even with more new content, the PvP won't get more exciting. That's what I had to say about those parts. Frodo, thank you very much for asking me for my opinion. And to all those guys who just listened to me, thanks for your attention.
New DLCs, new maps, they are not working. First of all, every new map, new DLC, hell, every other bigger patch is completely breaking this entire game, at least on PvP. Pyromanes, battle rigs, Threatenordos, Trials, or recently this new Chinese Lost Colony dragon. I could go on forever. Nothing is getting play tested for PvP before it's getting released. They are breaking the game with almost every new thing that is getting added to this game. And even though they sometimes are nerfing or fixing certain items or tames, it still leaves the game somehow worse than before. And even if there's one or two good things being received positively from the community from time to time, the negative stuff is way too overwhelming. As I said, Pyros, Threatenordos, Trials on Lost Colony, the new dragon, everything made PvP and the meta worse in my opinion, and there's so much more stuff.
Yo, what's up guys, this is Smurf. Obviously I'm going to talk a bit about the building aspects of the game, especially PvP building. I do want to start off with some positive feedback though. First of all, we've got a huge and super clean sandbox building system. There are a lot of possibilities that allow for some insanely good building methods. You can get really creative with it, and overall it's just feeling super smooth to use. Also, the template hammer that was introduced in the latest big update is probably one of the biggest quality of life updates they've ever done. It literally saves you hours of your time. On top of that, the new turrets, Tesla and Blade Boss are actually really strong additions to the PvP building sandbox and buff the outside building meta a lot. Now let's talk about some smaller problems. In an update from over 1.5 years ago, we've had this really annoying issue with the cryofridge caps that you can get stuck on when you walk over them. I don't know what they've changed, but maybe they reduced the hitbox, but it just doesn't really make sense, and I don't see why they can't just simply reverse it. Also, for about half a year now, we've no longer able to snap more than one textile door to a cliff platform or to other textile doors. I'm not sure if that's intentional or a bug, but either way it's pretty frustrating. Another issue is template forwarding. For around 3 months now, using the in-game method has been broken whenever a template requires a snap point. The selected snap point just gets randomly overridden, which basically makes the bigger templates unusable. Now let's get into some bigger issues, mainly regarding the PvP meta and their attempts to push it more towards outside building. There are two major problems here. The first one is the structure cap. On Old Orc, at least on PC and PlayStation, I'm pretty sure we had a higher limit. Now we are tied to 5.5k, which is very limiting. Inside caves that might still be manageable, but as soon as we move to the outside building it becomes a real problem. If you're placing only a few towers and spam, you might be able to make it work somehow. But the moment you want to include some actual base with crafting stations, war rooms and proper infrastructure, you're going to run into structure cap issues very quickly. This also makes the tech bunker, which I assume is meant to replace cave and rat hole building, pretty much unviable. An empty bunker alone already takes up 700 more structures. Add a base inside plus a tower on top to protect it and you're hitting the cap in no time. And considering how easy it is nowadays to drop a tower, we all know one tower isn't enough to defend a base. And that's without even talking about the spam yet. The second big issue is breeding. To properly push mutation lines, you need a lot of space for a lot of dinos, and it's just not realistically protectable in the overworld, which means the only viable option right now is still living inside of caves. In my opinion, a real good addition would be something like the propagator from the CS mod, a structure that allows you to breed dinos inside of it. This could reduce the overall number of tames on the server, which would help with the lag. It would reduce space needed for breeding setups and therefore also cut down on the amount of structures used on shelves and defenses. At the same time, it would also create new kind of valuable loot target for raiders. To keep it balanced, you could also cap the number of dinos each propagator could hold. On that way, this would still need to build a large setup with multiple units, basically creating a new base module similar to crafting stations and war rooms. Thanks for your attention, that's it from my side.
The player base is actually a chicken and an egg problem. Do players leave because there aren't enough of them, Or are there too few players because everyone has left? The fact is, it's a vicious circle. At a certain point, there are too few players, and gradually the servers will become less populated, and more servers will be shut down. And then we've got a problem. This vicious circle will accelerate, and at a certain point, things will happen very quickly, and all servers will be empty. After all, who wants to play a multiplayer survival game if there's no one to play with? In my opinion, Wildcard's current strategy isn't sustainable. They keep releasing new content, update after update, which boosts player numbers for a short time, meaning a few players stick around each time. The problem with this is that players don't stick around long term. Many check out the game for a few days or even a couple of weeks and then simply leave. You can see this very clearly in the Steam trends. With major updates like Lost Colony, the number of players doubled to over 40 or even 50,000 concurrent players, only to drop back at around 20,000 players over the following days and weeks. But this actually shows that there would be enough players who want to play the game but simply can't, or that the content isn't good enough to keep new players engaged. And it doesn't really help that the player base and the community are split between two games, with ASE now having exactly as many players as ASA. And the fact that there isn't a single official server left on ASE, nor have there been any updates for months or even years, doesn't make it any better. I mean, from the large Aquatica DLC, but we all know how that turned out. It's now pretty clear that ASE attracts more hardcore PvP players, while ASA draws in more PvE players. Whatever you see on my channel, most ASE players would simply wipe me out without hesitation, because ASE has the strongest PvP community. But I'm sure that ASA could become the better game in the future, which is why I am creating content for ASA and trying to support the community. And there is such a huge community, and the community is so lovely, yet at the same time a bit of a mess. But I love sitting with you all on the ARK Discord, chatting before big updates drop and waiting together for the new DLC creatures and maps to arrive. One step towards uniting the community would be to involve it even more in the development process. Give us more updates and let us have a say. Make polls on which features we want to get. What we need is a sustainable strategy for bringing the community back together. It shouldn't matter whether you play PvE, single player or hardcore PvP. We all play this game and love it. And we need to take a good look at ourselves here. There isn't just one right way to play ARK. However you play ARK, it is the right way. Unless you're a hacker, masher or cheater, then f*** you. The gaming industry is now a highly competitive sector, which makes it even more important to connect with your community and spend your money wisely. Collaborations with brands that feel completely disconnected from the actual community feel like you're wasting your money. Sure, the Ninja Turtles and Power Rangers are cool and most of us know them from our childhood, but going to such lengths for a few skins, I'm not sure if this is worth it. Nobody wanted these skins, and if we're honest, they'd probably already been in the mod browser and were removed before the collaboration, because the community usually builds things like that themselves very quickly when they want it. There are now so many great skins, items and mods in the mod browser that really add a lot to the game, and so promotional campaigns like this just don't feel right. And we can see that you can do better. Yes, Wildcard, you can do better. When we think of all the charity streams where we can donate so we can vote for creature TLCs, we can see that there are good ideas on how to sort this out properly. But please stop wasting money on weird promotions. There are so many great content creators out there, whether it's Rasclog that's streaming hours before a huge update, people like Captain Fat Dog, Syntag, or so many other smaller creators. These are the people and lead generators you should be investing in. I still wonder why the big creators don't simply get a few keys on each update that they can give away or get invited to events. I mean, you can be creative with that and reach a large number of people around the world. Just simply invite GP to one of your events, he will find out everything anyway.
Lost Colony was probably the worst map ever designed. They had no pop at all at release. It was scary. Like the servers were at 0, 1 to 5 pop most of the time. But I could go on forever. They needed to listen to their community for once. They needed to invest into their game, and they needed to talk to people that actually understand their game to make it better. Because I'm pretty sure the devs do not understand their own game, at least not the PvP side of it. I could go on forever. I could go on with more problems. But that's it for now. That's it for my part of this video. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.
As you've seen, there are a lot of opinions, and I'm writing these before I've seen the clips from the other creators. So there might actually be far more than I realize at that point, and the others also have added new points. This video is intended as an attempt to address these issues in a constructive way and offer possible solutions, but can only work if people actually listen and understand. I don't have a solution for all of these issues and can only say what I think, but I see the current situation as an opportunity to make a real difference. ARK is a game that has helped us through tough times, where we have made and reconnected with many new and old friends. For some of us, it's now even our job, or we simply share many memories with the community, and it would be a shame if we were to lose all of that. Thanks to all the creators who lent me their voices and contributed to this video. When I started writing this script, I didn't think it would end up being this long, but somehow more and more kept getting added. Thanks to you all for your time and effort. All the creators are linked below, so please check out their work. I hope you liked this video, and I'm thrilled to read if this video has helped you. Hit the like button, leave a comment below for the algorithm, and consider subbing to the channel. Alright, Frodo.